Okay, so very common, especially when you're working with this pipe stuff. We already talked about the threads. We talked about some of these fittings need to actually, they're threaded, so you need to run your pipe into it. Well, pipe essentially doesn't come threaded. It does come threaded on one end, but let's say you have to make it shorter, you got to be able to thread it. How do you thread it? Well, let's just check that out. All right, so I'm going to put that back. I'm going to use this stand here. It's made by Rigid. There are many others, but this one I'm going to work with here, and I'll show you how it goes together as far as clamping the pipe here in just a second. First, what I'm going to do is show you this. This is our pipe threader, okay? And it's kind of like a ratchet. You can also pull this out, separate that, and you can see that this is set up for 1/2 inch. So this is going to be for 1/2 inch, and you can get a die for any size. Generally, the head gets bigger the bigger the stuff is, and of course you want more mechanical advantage out here, so you just watch what you're getting. But most importantly, what I want to do is find out how much room I need in order to work with this. So in this particular case, the thread is actually started on this side of the die over here. So I got to feed the pipe in this way, and if I'm feeding the pipe in that way, I need to make sure I have enough room between here and here. Okay, so I'm going to leave about this much sticking out or so I have enough room to feed this into the backside. Okay, so you see how I need that room. Set that off to the side, and then I'm going to take my chain and I'm going to lay it over top. And down here, you can see these pins that are popping out here. There's a spot in the casting that will drop into, and I'm going to grab my handle and spin. And what it's doing is pulling this chain back and now making it really tight over top of this. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a little squeeze here to make sure that this thing isn't going to move, and perfect, this thing doesn't move, so we're in good shape. Now I can go ahead and actually reassemble my die head here, my threader, and make sure it's going in the right direction, and it's not, so I'm going to put it in this side, okay, and I'll be able to crank. Whoops, I actually had that in reverse. Let's spin it. Come on, there we go. We're going to go this way. Okay, now that I have it this way, I want to make sure that I'm using a tapping or cutting fluid. I'm going to put a little here, and I'm also going to put some on my threads of my tool, and I'm going to start this on the back side. And the nice thing is there's a nice little guide here. I'm going to put a little bit of pressure in up against the pipe so that the teeth of my die are starting to bite into the pipe itself. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and start to crank around. Now, I'm starting to get it to cut, which is really fantastic here. It might be hard for you to see, but I can see right down into here, seeing that I'm cutting reasonably well. I may drop a little bit more cutting fluid in here because now I can see and everything started, and I'm just going to work the process. Now, can you go too far? Absolutely. You really need to be watching how far you're going. There's a particular distance. Usually it's about the end of the die. So you'll see when the pipe gets very close over here. Now you can make the thread a little bit tighter or looser by how far you go. Generally what I like to do is give it enough, but not too much. So we're going to go close to the end of the die there, and I'm going to stop. And at this point I'm going to pull out on this, I'm going to rotate it around, and it is going to reverse my ratcheting direction. So I'm going to break the chip, and then I'm going to start backing this off. Now if my setup is right, I'll be able to do this by hand, and I'll slide this right off. I'm going to set this off to the side. Okay, and now I have a threaded pipe. Now, am I done? I can be, but I really should be doing things like this, for example. This right here is a reamer. I can actually use this to go and ream out the hole after I've cut it. Okay, oftentimes done actually when you get done cutting something. Now, while we're doing this, we're going to go ahead and have the conversation about cutting off. Now, let's say that I needed a nipple at a particular length here. I can measure that out. And then what I'm going to do is break out my big old pipe cutter. Okay, I may probably cut before I thread, depending on what I have. If I'm making a small nipple, it's hard to say how I'm going to do this, but I have the option. What this looks like is we're going to open this jaw up enough to where it is going to, the pipe is going to fall right in between these two rollers, and I'm going to snug it up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start rotating. And I'm going to make at least a revolution, and I'm going to tighten it up again. and then tighten it up again. Okay, and you can already see that that little cutter there is actually starting to make a heck of a mark in my pipe. And I'm going to keep rotating and readjusting. You can also go back and forth, but you definitely want to make sure that you go all the way around, because you need to pierce it all the way around. And you keep working it until it pops right off of there. All right, so that's how the pipe works the same with the smaller materials. And as you can see, it pierces right through that material nicely. And again, going back to the deburring process, you can use this right here inside of the pipe and crank this around. It is essentially a pipe reamer or deburr tool. And that gets rid of the excess material that was pushed down into the pipe. Okay? Now my pipe has been cut to length. I also was able to actually thread this. So again, pipe cutting, pipe threading.